Hello everyone, let's review the ban list updates for the 3-card blind format that will come into effect this August. As a reminder, as a community you voted on these cards to determine whether they would be added to the ban list or not, and you were able to vote +2, +1, +0, -1, or -2 to represent how strongly you would like the card to be added to the ban list versus remain legal, where a positive number indicated that you would like the card to remain legal, and a negative number indicated that you would like the card to be added to the ban list. In the interest of getting you the information that you need to start brewing as fast as possible, I wanted to let you know that Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares, Sen's Tactician, White Orchid Phantom, and Inkmoth Nexus were all added to the ban list. Let's begin the discussion by looking at the 2 cards that were part of this vote that remained legal, starting with Boseiju Who Endures. As a card that got recently unbanned, Boseiju Who Endures was a card that many players were worried would take over the format, but that didn't prove to be the case this month. If anything, it underperformed. I believe that the card is positioned to become a more significant part of the meta, and might be able to keep some problematic decks that use non-basic lands, artifacts, and enchantments in check. We'll have to keep our eyes on this card closely in the coming months just to make sure that it doesn't get out of hand, but for the time being, its performance and niche in the meta seem in line with what is appropriate in the format. Next up we have Ocelot Pride, which is a new to the format, very powerful 1-drop. Anyone who's been following this format for any amount of time should be aware that 1-drops are a critical part of the ecosystem for 3-card blind. If any one particular 1-drop outperforms others by a significant margin, it can dramatically affect the meta diversity. Ocelot Pride has had an impressive performance and has been reasonably popular. The community was leaning in the direction of keeping this card legal, which I think is reasonable given that its performance hasn't been too far out of line for what we expect from a good 1-drop, but I'd be very curious to see if the community opinion on this card changes over the coming months. Alright, so now let's cover the cards that were added to the ban list, beginning with Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares, which were bundled together for the purpose of this vote because the 2 cards occupy essentially the same niche within the format. Path to Exile has been the most ubiquitous form of removal in this format for a long time. Between it being low cost and unconditional with no drawbacks, it has left very little room for other cards to occupy the same space. This vote seems to indicate that the community generally is interested in seeing what the format might look like if we clear the way for other removal spells to be viable. Next up we have Sen's Tactician, which many players in this community would agree has overstayed its welcome. Its sibling cards Chronomaton and Swarm Shambler were both added to the ban list many months ago because they limited the number of 1-drops that were viable in the format by simply outcompeting them. Sen's Tactician on its own has had the same effect but to a lesser degree for a long time now, and this month it finally reached its breaking point and became the most popular threat in the format. We will be entering a new era of 3-card blind because this is the first time that the 3 basic Chronomatons are all on the ban list at the same time. This may result in us seeing an entirely different spread of 1-drops than we've ever seen before. Next up we have White Orchid Phantom, which was by far the card that the community wanted to see banned the most, with an average opinion of -0.87. The most significant impact the card had was in the Felia Exuberant Shepherd, Remote Farm, White Orchid Phantom deck. For this reason, it's worth noting that Felia was a popular write-in this month. So far, Felia's performance without White Orchid Phantom has been modest at best. It is a very powerful card and one we can continue to watch closely over the next few months, but I suspect with White Orchid Phantom gone, we will see a lot less Felia. And our final card on this list is Inkmoth Nexus, which is a bit of a bittersweet farewell. Colorless manlands play a significant role in keeping this format diverse and healthy. However, Inkmoth Nexus is a card that has a history of many offenses, including its most recent one of its combination with Invasion of Gobakon. I think Inkmoth Nexus would be a card that is appropriate to return to the format in the future, but for the time being, with it gone, we might see the man-land-based strategies branch out a little more, and maybe even Blinkmoth Nexus will see some play. In parallel to the ban vote, the supporters of this community also are able to participate in in the unban vote. To make sure that the unban vote and ban vote aren't in direct conflict with each other, the supporters of this community are privy to the trends of the ban vote while casting their unban votes. For this reason, the supporters were aware that Inkmoth Nexus was likely to be banned, and in response to that, Cathedral of War is being unbanned. Cathedral of War was a card that was originally banned for its interaction with Inkmoth Nexus specifically. Now that Inkmoth Nexus is being banned, Cathedral of War makes sense to unban because the card is essentially harmless without Inkmoth Nexus in the equation. That wraps it up for our ban list changes, and as a reminder, the main event will be kicking off on the 1st of the month, and the new cards from Bloomborough will be legal during August. I'm looking forward to seeing what you all manage to cook up. Thanks for watching everyone, and see you soon.